Hi, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Politics with Sherry Jacobus. Thank you for subscribing. And if you just happen to find us from scrolling around, like we do here, subscribe, hit that button, help me out. So, I'm going to talk again about Marjorie Taylor Greene and the death threats that she's been getting. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday. I'd just like to note that when she was a hardcore MAGA person, with all the violence at January 6th, she wasn't in any trouble. She wasn't complaining about threats from the left. She was pretty outspoken with a lot of lies and misinformation and promoting some pretty horrible things. Now that she's had a change of heart for whatever reason, either by strategy or some moral compass realignment or something, she's getting death threats. Has to worry about security. I mean, she made a lot of money with insider trading, so she can certainly afford to pay for her own security. But this is how Trump and MAGA operate. Everybody is under threat. I've shared with you several times about how I was threatened. My safety was threatened. I was told Trump has guys and queens that might be on their way over to harm you. I've been hacked, catfished, the whole 9 yards. So I've been going through this for 10 years. Think about this. Kash Patel's girlfriend, a bad singer, now has to, he flies up the private jets that we pay for, your tax dollars, our private government jets, to go watch her perform. That is an abuse of the perks of his position. He doesn't care in the era of Trump that they feel entitled. So we're paying for that. All right. For him to go see his girlfriend perform. Well, now he has fired the person at the FBI who I guess let that information get out. So now they want to hide it from us. Now we know that Kash Patel's girlfriend is getting security through the FBI, paid for by my tax dollars and your tax dollars. Kash Patel's girlfriend. Stephen Miller and his wife and some other top MAGA people feel unsafe. Well, they're out there promoting things that are illegal, unconstitutional, violent, immoral. So people found out where they lived in Arlington. So they are now living on military bases in a gated place with security paid for by our tax dollars. A mere staffer for Trump. We've never had this before. They better look at what they're doing that makes them feel unsafe. They know there haven't been any real threats, but they know what they're doing is really bad. They know. They know. So keep in mind that I think what Trump wants to do is when he removes the security from people he considers to be his detractors or his enemies, Americans, he wants them to become a target. So back in March, he cut off the Secret Service protection for former President Biden's kids and for Kamala Harris, the former Vice President of the United States, and other people. This is what he's done. He did this so they have to pay out of pocket or to put them at risk. He wants harm to come to them, in my view. If he could, he would have removed the Secret Service for Joe and Jill Biden. I mistakenly thought he did that. I put that on Twitter, and then I've since removed it. The only reason he was unable to cut off President Biden's Secret Service protection is because by law, a former president and their spouse is covered for life. Now, what's problematic with that overall, if you recall, remember January 6th, Trump had lost the election and he orchestrated the insurrection, which resulted in the death of police officers and one of Trump's domestic terrorists that he sent, the mob he sent to the Capitol. Remember, they tried to hang Mike Pence? Now, on that day, Mike Pence was afraid to get into the car with the Secret Service to be whisked away from the Capitol. He refused because he knew that they were under Donald Trump's control and that they had somehow become loyal to Trump. He knew. The vice president of the United States knew that he would not be safe getting in the car with that Secret Service. We know that from that day, Trump's Secret Service, they all deleted all of their text messages that day to hide their involvement in January 6th. Trump had done something that's unprecedented and was shocking when he took his favorite Secret Service agent and made him Deputy White House Chief of Staff, a political position. And there was some shenanigans with Jill Biden's Secret Service, if you recall. And also, Joe Biden, the Bidens both together, did not trust the Secret Service. I don't know all the details. I don't think we'll ever know all of the details, but they knew that these were people who were dangerous, who were loyal to Trump. And so they switched out their Secret Service so that they could have some of their old Secret Service from when he was vice president. Also, on that day of January 6th, again, the Secret Service. Trump weaponizes this. That's the point I'm trying to make. He removes the taxpayer funded security protection from people that he wants harmed. And the others that do have it, he still controls them. The Secret Service is supposed to be completely independent, but something wanky and wonky, weird happened under Trump. So on January 6th, and I've talked about this before, but I think it bears repeating a lot. The vice president-elect, Kamala Harris, had a scheduled but non-public visit that day on January 6th to the DNC, which is right there by the Capitol complex where the House and Senate office buildings are, where the RNC is, near the DNC, the Capitol building, all of that. I worked there for many years on Capitol Hill, and I lived on Capitol Hill for 30 years. I'm very well aware of all the ins and outs in and around those buildings, alleyways, everything. So I know what I'm talking about. On that day, Kamala Harris, again, she was on a scheduled but non-public visit to the DNC. Okay. Because it was scheduled, it would have to be arranged. Security would have to be arranged. The Secret Service would do an advance sweep of the DNC and the area around the building. The Secret Service would have been among the only people that knew that she was heading there that day. And yet, in their advance sweep, they missed a pipe bomb. How do you miss a pipe bomb? You don't, is what I'm saying. You don't. And in fact, the one that was placed also as a decoy behind the RNC, right by the trash can, would not have been found. It was found by accident, which is the only way they found the one at the DNC. And the way they found it is a woman who lived in the building that backs up to the RNC building. And there's an alleyway there where you drive to get into the garage. I know this because I drove and went into that garage many days when I worked at the RNC back when I was a Republican. And so this young woman came out of the apartment. They went outside through the alley into another door to do laundry. And when she saw that, she then called, I believe, the DC police. I don't know if it was Capitol Police or DC Police, since I wouldn't know if she knew how to call the Capitol Police. She called the DC Police. They immediately, when they saw what this was, they thought, well, if there's one here at the RNC, there's one at the DNC. And they went, and that's when they found the pipe bomb that should have been found by the Trump Secret Service detail that Trump assigned to Kamala Harris, the vice president-elect of the United States, the first woman, and a woman of color at that. So the weaponization of security and the abuse of security is through the roof with Trump, but also his corrupt, evil, immoral staff, allies, the people around him, that even without threats, I don't think there's any reports of Stephen Miller and his wife getting threats, but they know that what they're doing is so dangerous and so harmful to so many Americans, they're probably thinking, well, if, they're anything like MAGA, because they know how violent MAGA is, because they're the ones that help make them violent. They're thinking, we better take precautions. So we are paying for security for staff. Trump and his MAGA are violent and dangerous. And we have to say that out loud more and more often. There is a reason why Mitt Romney was spending a lot of money for his own security. That came out later. He never had to do that before. He'd been in public life his entire life. But with MAGA in charge and Trump in charge, Mitt Romney had to hire his own personal security. Now, what about people who can't afford that, who don't have access to that, like me? Like me. When I was threatened. All right? This is why it's dangerous. There's so many things that happened. We've been hearing that the victims, Trump's victims on Epstein Island, were afraid of him and they were threatened. Stormy Daniels was threatened, all right, by a Trump goon. So we know he does this. We know he does this. Too many of us have been threatened. And now we know that he plays not just politics with the security that we, the taxpayers, fund, but he co-ops these people to make them, he made a lot of the Secret Service his own personal militia, to the point where the Bidens didn't trust it and switched it out. What was the dog? What was the first dog that the Bidens had? Or was it the puppy they brought in? Was that Commander? Was that the one that kept biting Secret Service agents? Great to everybody else, but didn't like the Secret Service agents? I think the dog knew. I think the Biden's German Shepherd knew. They knew that there were people around the president, his master, his guy, that were dangerous. I think it was a watchdog. So we had a dog, a loyal dog, protecting the president of the United States from what I think were probably still some dirty Secret Service agents around. We may never find out what happened. The whole issue of those deleted text messages still hangs out there. That is frightening. It is serious. And the fact that we don't hear about it anymore and it was never resolved is a pretty good sign that it's still going on. That is still going on. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't trust the Secret Service. I'm sure there are many good Secret Service agents, but there's enough in there that's been infiltrated. And we know this. We know this. Because again, Mike Pence, the vice president, would not get in the car with them that day on January 6th because he knew. He knew he wasn't safe. And again, when you're doing an advanced pre-visit bomb sweep of a building, especially on a high impact day like January 6th, when they all knew what was going to be going on that day, and you miss a pipe bomb at the DNC in your advanced sweep in advance of the Vice President-elect Kamala Harris' visit there, I'm not buying it. I think we need to talk about this stuff more. I've talked about it before, but there are too many of these situations surrounding Donald Trump. We avoided talking about him and the Epstein files because, we can't talk about such delicate things. We have to start talking about them. These are real issues, and they're getting worse. There have been too many accidents for people that very conveniently were beneficial for Trump, the people around him. I talked about that yesterday. He knows what removing the security for someone can do. I think even if he knows the person will eventually hire their own, You still have to jump through a lot of hoops to make sure you can trust the security detail. It's my belief, and I think I'm very right on this, that Trump likes to announce when he's removing the taxpayer funded security of people that he considers his enemies, his detractors, just opponents, really. For him, an opponent is an enemy. I think he does it because he wants to make them vulnerable. Remember when he was running for president in 2016 and he was trying to warn against the types of, Supreme Court justices that Hillary Clinton would nominate if she were president, if she were elected? And then he said, "But that's okay." He goes, "I got my Second Amendment people who can take care of that," insinuating that MAGA, who were so pro Second Amendment, would assassinate Hillary Clinton. There's so much more like this about him that we forget about, but I think we need to pull it all together and start talking about it. We are so far past a point where we should feel like this is indelicate. This is what we are facing right now. He has pardoned January 6th insurrectionists, okay? Criminals, traitors, people who are 100% criminals. While he's having his ICE thugs, his masked agents. By the way, at DHS, it may be Kristi Noem in charge, but it's her boyfriend, the married Corey Lewandowski, her top advisor there, who's really calling the shots on this stuff. And I can tell you firsthand that he is a bad guy. And we remember how he used to bruise up women. He likes it, his threats. So I think this is his kink. The ICE agents doing this. So ICE agents, we saw them now in Chicago the other day, taking clergy who were outside of churches protesting ICE agents, clergy, members, men of the cloth being thrown to the ground and handcuffed. This is what they're doing now in the age of Trump. We have to start talking about it, not just as one-offs where we share it. Oh, we're so shocked because they don't care. We have to start looking at the entire, what encompasses Trump's entire life in terms of violence and these threats and how people conveniently disappear. We talk about it about Putin, people getting window cancer, right? We have to start talking about it with Trump. We have to. I think on January 6th, he wanted Nancy Pelosi killed. Remember, the people were in there looking for Nancy. Where are you, Nancy? Remember that? Going into her office or her staff is hiding. Remember? Mike Pence, I think he knew that he wasn't safe. He'd be disappeared. And whoever was behind those pipe bombs, I think that there was a plan. Didn't go well. These people aren't necessarily good at this, but, well, no, some of them are. If they're professionals, they are. But this was the intention. I do think they wanted to take out the vice president-elect, the first woman who'd be vice president, and a Black woman at that. MAGA is that bad. And if we don't talk about it, then when something happens, we act all surprised, right? I think the same thing about Charlie Kirk. I don't think he was silenced because there was any threat that he had the Epstein files. He was a proponent, a very vocal proponent of releasing the Epstein files. I believe there's a good chance that he was taken out to send a message to others to keep those files hidden. And now that Trump is all of a sudden saying, yeah, hey, yeah, release the files, that means they've been tampered with. That's why there was the government shutdown. They needed time to figure out how to deal with this. Well, they did. They did. This is a criminal regime. They know it. And that's why they all know they need security. It is that simple.